yesterday.
Oh.
So I'm going to carry on. Thank you, Ashley, because some of the things that you introduced kind of lead beautifully into the discussion around midwifery, specifically plastics and waste. And interestingly, it resonated because I became interested in environmental issues. We didn't have sustainability back then in the 1980s when I had two very small children, and I read an article in The Guardian by Jeremy Seabrook about the world that we were leaving for our children. And I sat up and thought, oh my goodness, we have to do something. Sadly, I think things have got worse rather than better in many ways, but there is a raising of consciousness happening at the moment, particularly, that gives me hope for the future. And having a granddaughter, I'm now in that second generation of concern about what we're doing for our kids. And I think in terms of midwifery, it's quite a good point to kind of recognize that in many ways, pregnancy is a time when women and their partners become more aware of issues relating to climate change and climate emergency. As I said, our Prime Minister announced yesterday. It's happening in a lot of other countries as well. So it's there again. I'm a bit obsessed with Jacinda Ardern, as you can say, but I'm just very chuffed about that. Yeah. And also the UN Secretary General yesterday I'm talking about yesterday because I'm in Thursday morning now, of course, probably the strongest he's ever made about humanity waging war on nature. That's a fairly strong statement. And, we haven't got a lot of time to really get our act together and start to make a huge difference. And COVID has kind of got in the way. Wherever you turn, to a degree, wherever you turn, you're still seeing stuff on climate warming. But, COVID has kind of taken, although there are parallels and there's a fairly compelling argument for COVID being almost part of the package as far as climate management is concerned. The photograph there is the school strikes, which took place in New Zealand, as they did in many other parts of the world earlier in the year, led by Greta Thunberg, of course. In terms of health, I'm not going to talk very much about health generally. It's an area that I am very interested in, but I want to focus on maternity and midwifery. But we know that 8 million tons of plastic end up in oceans every year. Very depressing photographs of wildlife who've got caught up in plastic bottle tops and that kind of thing. And 25% of the waste generated by a hospital is plastic. Gibbons has published a really interesting study where a single hysterectomy found that the procedure can produce up to 20 pounds of waste, most of which is plastic. And, waste in health is a big problem that's being addressed on lots of levels. So how do we address it? I just want to kind of give you a little bit of information about my involvement as an educator in midwifery and how we've gone about trying to make a difference, raise consciousness, and hopefully send people out into practice from a Bachelor of Midwifery program with an eye on some of the issues relating to this subject. And because I've had a long-term interest in environmentalism, when we were asked or mandated to produce a new program that had a component of sustainability in it about 10 years ago now, I was very excited. And I went off to see what I could include in some courses that we were going to use within the program, and found there was very, very little that related to midwifery. There was such a dearth, it was untrue. And I thought, this is really interesting, because if we don't have a focus as a collective group of professionals, then how can we actually address it and take action and move forward? And so started producing materials, and this escalated into a bigger interest in the area. With a couple of colleagues, we produced a book, Sustainability, Midwifery and Birth, more because there was nothing else out there. And what was really interesting, when we approached people to write chapters, there was a universal acceptance. People were really interested. They thought there wasn't enough about it. And we've just done our second edition that's just been released a few months ago. So I'm just going to talk, it's a thread throughout the program. So there's a consciousness about sustainability, whether it's in breastfeeding or care of the newborn. But we do have 2 specific courses that are very, very focused on sustainability. So in year 1, it's an introduction to sustainability, and environmentalism is a very strong focus on there. I made a mistake actually initially when we launched it. I had a focus on what climate change was going to do if we weren't careful. I was showing things like The Age of Stupid, which is quite a scary film, fictional, but with a lot of fact built into it, a bit of a docudrama really. And I was actually alienating the students. I was terrifying them. They were going home in tears. So I thought we've got to address this. So we moved to a more values-based approach using the work of Nikki Harre, who's a positive psychologist, and her details are on the resource list that I've provided. And that's made a big difference, because it's got the buy-in that we needed to really get students to engage with the issues. So that's been a real success. They look at sustainable healthcare generally, and there are lots of organizations around the world, from the Sustainable Development Unit in the UK. There's I can't remember the name of the American one now, it's gone out of my head. We've got Orateo here in New Zealand. There's an Australian group. So there's lots of groups out there, lots of good things happening. And sustainability in the childbearing period, where we cover all of the issues relating to environmentalism, social sustainability, economic, etc. And in year 3, it's more about setting up a sustainable practice. A lot of our midwives here go into independent practice when they qualify, or self-employed practice. Those that go into the hospital, we get them to think about resource management as well. So the assignments are in year 1, and Ashley talked about life cycle. We get the students to actually, in groups, take a subject that's directly related to midwifery, and that can be anything. It can be, it could be disposable versus reusable nappies. Formula is something that they often will look at. It could be chocolate, because midwives look like chocolate or coffee. And so they look at it from the moment of extraction of the raw products, through to manufacturing, through to distribution, and involving packaging, etc., the use and the end of life disposal. And sometimes it's cradle to cradle, because hopefully there is a product at the end that can be recycled or reused. And that is a huge kind of wake-up call for them, and they find it really, really useful. And I'll show you some of the net result of that in a moment. And in year 3, they present a proposal for a sustainable midwifery practice, which includes consideration of resource management. So what are we using? Why are we using it? Could we use something that had more value in terms of reuse, recycle, etc.? Or, are we really stuck with this product at the moment? Okay, so I'm not going to read the quotes. I did a wee research project where I interviewed new graduates who'd been out in practice for a year, and they'd actually been exposed to this intervention, I guess you'd call it, within the program. So you can see Lydia did it on paper towels, and she's always thinking, when she pulls the paper towels, back to that life cycle. So this is a year on. In fact, it's 3 years on, because she did that life cycle in year 1, but there's a resonance there. Yellow bags. I don't know whether they're still doing this anymore. Not with them. We don't have that much air traffic anymore, but flying yellow bags and not putting stuff in if you don't have to. So not using as much as a result of the fact that it's got to be dealt with at the source of disposal. Putting her own information folders that she asked women to return rather than just give out lots of paper all the time. And I know a lot of people are now doing online resources as well. In terms of their carbon footprint, thinking about what they do in terms of traveling to appointments. And these two here, it's a midwife and a student midwife who were cycling around the city. They had a locally based practice with women within a few kilometers, and they cycled to appointments, not necessarily to births, but it's every little helps. These were hospital midwives who talked about the life cycle analysis. And I love Amy's response that she said, I find that if I keep the rooms understocked, then people don't use as much. If you put too much out, they'll just keep helping themselves. And Andrea, who felt like the antichrist of sustainability, trying to get nipple shields not to be single use, so there's less waste. So it's there. They're really, really thinking about it. There's a single latex glove there. Instead of just using a pack of 2 for vaginal examinations, just use 1. One of the students below us did hers on the obstetric gel, and she found it wasn't a very nice product. So I always use aloe vera gel. And there was a little group of them who were making their own gel as well, which is absolutely fantastic. So I think we can honestly say, I'll just flick it back for a moment, that, it's a small study, but what it did was, generate hope that we were actually making a difference, and they were coming out of the program with an eye on the whole issue of waste in practice and how they could actually do something to minimize that. I've done some other stuff more recently, but not quite the same. I'm not going to go into that because I really wanted to focus on resource management today. As COVID, I've already said, it has been a major problem because it's one step forward, 2 steps back in some ways, because of the increase in need for one-use products. I think we really need to think about how we're addressing that and learn some lessons from this as well. We've dodged a bullet in New Zealand. We really haven't had the problems, but I know it's a major problem, and I'm seeing photographs in the media of masks, being washed up on beaches in droves, and it's not a pretty sight. But cleans have, and I can't remember where they're from actually. I think it's European anyway. They've done some work around this, and I think the disruption of COVID-19 pandemic can lead to large and persistent changes in economic structures. In a sense, the outbreak presents a rare chance to shift modern product systems towards a more sustainable future trajectory. And I think we need to remember that, there is always an upside to every downside. It might seem very frustrating, but let's actually move forward and do something with this. And I love this photograph. A lot of the photographs on here are mine, and this was a wonderful Heads in the Sand protest locally here in New Zealand, where everybody put their butts in the air and their heads in the sand just to make the point. And I think this is a fabulous book by Washington and Cook. Humans have always used denial when we're afraid, guilty, confused, or when something interferes with our self-image. We tend to deny it, yet denial is a delusion. When it impacts on the health of oneself or society or the world, it becomes a pathology. Climate change denial is such a case. And it's here, it's not going to go away. We have to take action. And I think we can do that. And I think we can do it particularly well if we manage it at a collective level. And our own professional field is a really good place to start. There is some fantastic research out there that demonstrates that, if it's our own sphere of practice, we're more protective about it. We're working with women and families. We can provide wonderful leadership and role modeling to encourage them. As Ashley said, the introduction of cloth versus disposable nappy, simple start, but they're sponges, they're interested, they want to do the best for their children. They don't want their kids to inherit a burnt out earth. And we have a huge role to play in that. So I would say, let's stop being ostriches. Let's get our head out of the sands. Let's take some responsibility. And I know we already are to some extent. I think we can do a lot more. And by working together, we can achieve some really significant change.
Thanks for watching this video from the Maternity and Midwifery Forum. For more expert opinion and analysis, hit the button below to subscribe.